Alright, it's kind of late. I was working till a little bit after 1 and then I had to wind down, so I decided to watch your video because it's pretty hard to multitask and do that. So, here we are at 2 a.m. Uh, First of all, I wanted to say I'm not lazy. I'm not saying I'm laissez-faire. I'm not saying I'm laid back and easygoing. I'm just saying I'm not trying to convert all of you people. It's more like I'm trying to memorize your positions. Right? And I like telling you things too that challenge your positions and seeing how you will react and you challenging me back and I see how I react and if I can incorporate the things that I learn and patterns, right? And that might sound all flowery to you guys, but it's just like to me, you guys must be a bunch of evangelicals to not get that I'm just not trying to make you into converts, right? I think that'll happen naturally. You will grow from this experience. I will grow. In my experience, people that take part in a lot of conversations challenging their ideas, they grow faster mentally, intellectually than people that don't do that. So I'm not worried about that. Having the conversation has that result. And I'm not a priest, so I'm not trying to get converts. It doesn't make me easygoing. And in fact, my trying to memorize your guys' position, however well I do it, it's a difficult thing. And I think that I'm trying means that I do it more than if I didn't try. Now, do I do it more than all of you guys that maybe are only trying in order to defeat it, right? You are interested in defeating it as you've learned about it, before you've learned as it comes out. I think that might make it difficult to understand. Um, Now, the way I see it is you claim I'm being circular because you say we only have the third person perspective. Okay, and so I'm circular because I derive that third person from the first person, right? Okay, but the circular thing would be that if then I derived the first person from the third person, you're the one, right? I see how the first person perspective has an explanation in our current third person model of the world, right? I see how you could derive that, but I'm not making that derivation. I'm starting from the first person because that's a direct experience. That's where the definitions and all the terms, all the information comes from. It doesn't need an axiom to explain it. You want to tell me something like cause and effect? Well, I don't really think that people already thousands of years ago today understood cause and effect enough to act like, well, I figured it out, so uh, there it is. It's automatic. No, I don't even know what people mean by cause and effect. You think the effect happens after the cause, but actually they don't. They happen at the same time, and so on. There's subtleties about people say the law of identity, and yet how it applies to the real world, not really clear. It's a frozen in time mathematical concept. These are the theories. What's known without theory is just that we are having these experiences, right? So I'm calling you circular because you derive the first person experience from the third person experience, right? And say thus you don't need it. But we know damn well that you and everybody else has derived it. You say historical, but there's a bunch of problems with that. First of all, historical means in your life, right? Because you didn't learn anything from what someone else learns except for through your own experiences, seeing their writing and things like that, listening to them tell you. And you're still learning, it's still changing. The third person perspective is the theoretical part. That's the theory of, hey, how does that all work? What's not a theory is that we're having these wave of emotions. Now, why they are that way, why the biorhythms are the way they are, I agree. We can look to our third world models and other models to try to explain that, but we can't explain it away. You have a set of information and you derive another set of information from it. We know the information we're starting with is the first person information. It might as well be a bunch of numbers and formula and factual empirical principles, because that's all that is empirical, is that first person experience. We know that's the data. We do transformations in math on it, and we end up with the third person perspective. We're stuck with that direction. If you want to go and say, no, I'm going to start here and work the other way, you're the one that's going back and creating a circuit. I'm going from, we have these dreams full of illusions, so the aspect that where we're unsure of it is because there's so much illusion and imagination involved. We do statistical processing to weed out as much of that as we can, and we end up with science and logic and reliable abstractions. And they go further and further up the level of abstractions. And in a sense, they become cleaner, right? And there seems to be less illusion because they're more reliable. They don't put distortions when they're used for transformations. But in reality, they're built on abstractions that are less solid than that we have perceptions. Okay, and then the reason I still derive materialism is because, look, if somebody presents, you are correct, if somebody presents functional equivalent alternatives, you can have any one of them. I called it an epistemological equivalency because there is no way to know a difference between them if they're being presented as actually functionally equivalent. Now, I pointed out that for a couple reasons, because if I'm supposed to take the dreamer and the matrix as functionally equivalent, and that's why they could be true to a mechanical universe, right? It's not just gears and stuff, but it's pressure and light and fields. It could be whatever it turns out to be, but mechanical, as opposed to a dreamer, as opposed to being in a matrix. If those are really, I'm supposed to take them as functionally equivalent, then I choose the mechanical one for various practical reasons. It suits my purposes better, just like polar versus Cartesian could suit my purposes, whether I'm, drawing a circle or making a sine wave. But really, I also noticed that when people say those three things, anybody that actually believes the matrix or the dreamer version, they mean something different. They mean that they can overcome it with their imagination and just willpower, that the conservation of energy won't be obeyed. The conservation of energy is just an illusion because so far we haven't noticed it getting broken. No, that doesn't seem productive. The natural philosophy model of materialisms, and that facts matter and they have material implications, that gives us a way to also have progress within that system. The system is intended to grow, whereas the principles you discover, like gravity, if you're in the dream, it's just like, yeah, because the dreamer, it hasn't broke gravity yet, but it could. So they aren't really functionally equivalent if they have those kinds of differences, right? In the Matrix, there still is a real world. So just like in the Matrix, you could find that out. And they wouldn't really be functionally equivalent. I'm arguing that at the same time I'm pointing out, even if you want to say, no, I'm going to make them exactly functionally equivalent. A dream where physics is, conservation of energy is always going to be followed in this dream. The computer is never going to have any flaw that a law of physics couldn't have, meaning no real flaws. Then they're all functionally equivalent, and I choose the materialist one that has a plan for how I keep learning out more and more about how it works. Okay, that's the most apt model for how I want to apply it. So there's no difference about our systems on being scientific or not. What it seems like to me is that you have a notion that science has to be deterministic in the sense that you think of determinism. And we established already how it's possible that there's many states into many states, and that would not be what you mean by determinism. I know of no proved law of nature that God couldn't roll dice. And you say, well, it'd have to be more than just dice. No, we don't know. I think that the matter can have this first person experience, like you were saying. We know it's happening in the third person world by, taking your axiom of starting there. We know it's happening, so the universe is generating this first person experience, feeling like being a homunculus. We'll find out how much of it is an illusion. If all the free will part, the willpower part, is an illusion, we still have this homunculus phenomena. It's still something has to feel that way. And when you want to say that it can't be there because something has to feel that way, no, itself, a physical part could do that. Just like when there's gravity and you go, well, is there a homunculus there making the gravity? No, it's the mass itself, the matter itself. There has to be some physical thing making this first person experience in the same way. And it doesn't require a puppeteer to be an observer or anything else. But it does mean that the universe creates things that feel like puppeteers. So the universe created this whole question, this whole thing of the homunculus. So we know the universe can create that appearance, that illusion of a homunculus. Right? And so we know that, and furthermore, that's all we know. That's all we know. Right? Because that's true even if we're in the Matrix and there's a computer. Well, then it's possible for the universe to have a computer that creates this phenomena we're experiencing. If we're in a dream and the universe is a dream world, the dream world of a God, then the universe is able to generate these first person experiences. And I don't think that it makes dualism make sense, that there's a separate homunculus. It's the thing itself is doing this phenomena. I believe we've constrained the problem to that. But you think that for there to be a willpower, that there's something unscientific about that. And I just think that there's something unmechanical about your theory of mechanics. And see, that's what a lot of what it comes down to is I don't believe the human race's theory of this third person world that you have developed over your life from reading books. And we feel like we got a great head start, and so we did, but it's from reading books. We took this information in ourselves, right? And we built up this model. And I don't think that we get to just act like this model that's in dispute, that you want to just say how we figured out that model from the first person perspectives. That's immaterial now. Doesn't matter how we got it. We got it. It's under dispute. For you to say that it's immaterial, how we got it is just historical, that is to beg the question in the classical sense. In other words, you're the one being more circular for that reason. Because you're saying that how we got to the conclusion that we're disputing is just historical. It doesn't bear on the argument. You're assuming the third person view that you have in mind. We already know it. But that's what we're disputing. I wanted to also ask or mention about what does it mean to exist, the solipsistic problem. Look, that's the point of the film strip here. I have the solution to this so-called solipsistic problem. What it means to exist for me, for an individual me, is to appear in this film strip. That's my justification for thinking that I am a phenomena, the color red exists, the red things exist. To exist means to be in here somewhere. That's the idea of illusions exist, is that because people will say, well, some of the things in here are illusions. Right, and so illusions exist. They were an illusion. It's called a hallucination or a million other kinds of illusions. They exist, and they are what they are. Things that only have images here, and if you double check them, they're not super consistent. They're not as consistent. Now we say, but they're not external. But what we really do is a statistical processing and find out they're not as consistent, right? A hallucination comes and goes. It's not like, you know, Pat a Pink Posty notes. So let's see my notes here. So yeah, I don't have faith in our folk ideas about the third person, including my own. We basically have to go from first person to third person. That's why we're not allowed to go back to first person. You can explain more fully, but you can't delegitimize or say it's not necessary or no, because that's the raw data. We're still working on the theory of third person. We don't have the theory of third person, and yay, we got it. Now, we just use it. No, we don't have it that good. It's under rapid development, actually. So my last thing was you're saying that we know what is in dispute. What's in dispute is the nature of the third person world. You say you have already figured it out, basically, right? And it's just historical how you figured it out, right? And I say how you figured it out is entirely what's on the table. In order to arrive, we first need to argue on the path, right? So I want to talk about the path from the film strip to your theory and my theory. And then I want those theories, related back to the film strip. But that isn't circular. That's the post and prediction, right? We're not saying this doesn't exist. We got the other thing that really exists. This is deeper. We dug beneath this into the deeper. No, we're building on our data from here. And to check our models that we build, we go ahead and see if it can post and predict this thing. So there's a cycle there. But the circularity is when you base a logical argument on one set of principles that you then also justify with the results of that argument. Right? So this is the first set of principles, and then you derive the third person. You can't go and derive these from this. And that's the whole point of the functional equivalence. Because when you try to derive this from this, it's like, yeah, but all the other functionally equivalent things could do it too. So it's interesting and it's science fiction, but the obvious direction is that one in the second video where I have 5 layers. You could layer it however many times you want, but you're going from raw data to a model to using those models you've derived as another kind of raw data, higher and higher as abstractions. All right, cheers.